Hey, it's syndicated radio talk show host, author, singer Al Cole, welcoming you to another edition of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. I come from CBS Radio. My shows are nationally syndicated. Coming up, hey, you could say he's a family member here. He's a musician, too. I'm a musician. I've been blessed to have traveled around the country, around the world in that capacity. And musicians are always welcome on People of Distinction. Stephen Vagovics is the special guest right now, waiting in the wings. He's doing some exceptional work here. And he's going to tell us about, we'd love to have young people on, talking about their new music out there. It's an exciting time. And we're going to check out all the great work that Stephen is doing with his music, and also ideas that he has about the music industry these days and opportunities for your other young people to get their music out there, and ideas that he has about how we can go about elevating our human family as well. He's a great guy, and he's going to contribute so much. I want you to run to his website and also contribute to what he's doing. Check it out. Download his music. You're going to love this. StephenVagovics.com. And I'll clue you in. Vagovics is VAGOVICS.com. Welcome, Stephen, to People of Distinction with Al Cole. It's really a pleasure to have you on today. How are you, Stephen?
It's a great pleasure to be on this show. I'm fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. And we really love the fact that you're doing some wonderful music, that you're on our show. We're going to give you a lot of feature with the music that you're doing currently. Tell us a little bit. I know that, you're actually not based in the United States. You're based elsewhere. Tell us a little bit about where you're living right now, and tell us a little bit about your roots here before we even get into any of your music. Introduce Stephen to our national listeners right now, Steve.
Okay, so I was born and I live in Slovakia, which is a country in the Central Europe. I'm living in the capital city, Bratislava, and my roots, well, I suppose that you are referring to my musical roots. Well, I've always loved rock bands like Queen or Led Zeppelin, but also my most favorite band of all time are the Beatles. And also I really like alternative rock musicians such as Tom York. And I guess these are my main influences on my work as well.
Now, the Beatles, they're all around the place. They never went out of fashion. Paul McCartney's still out there doing great things. Ringo Starr with his all-star band. Of course, they got their start in the early 60s. What makes you like the Beatles so much after all of these years, Stephen?
Well, they can perfectly capture all the emotions that one can expect from listening to music, even though they have some basic and simple melodies. It's understood immediately by everyone everywhere when their songs are being played somewhere. And I've always liked that beauty and simplicity of their music, and also the broad emotive state they can bring up all these wonderful compositions.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about, now that you've laid a little bit of the groundwork here, about simplicity, beauty, and the melody. Tell us a little bit about your music and how you accomplish the same thing with your melody. Now, there's nothing as good as hearing the music, but secondly, we can talk about the music. Do you do all the writing yourself, all the lyrics, all of the music? Do you do all of the instrumental tracks yourself? Tell us how you put your music together, Stephen.
Yeah, basically everything is done by me. I mean, when I have an idea, a musical idea, I can hear a simple melody, I try to write it down or record it as fast as possible, and then I lay all the instrument tracks, and I also try to mix and master it when it's my ability to do so. Sometimes I call an expert to help me with the mixing phase, but from the composition to the recording, I do everything by myself.
Now that's really impressive. And what kind of equipment do you use to mastermind all of this by yourself?
Well, I'm quite lucky to live near enough to some great studios, rehearsal rooms, but I have also some great equipment at home, some studio microphones. I have quite a lot of guitars and instruments to work around with, and I basically start with the drum track to put the rhythm onto the entire song, so I can start laying down guitars, and basically when I lay down an instrumental track, I go back to the start, to the drum track, add some patterns, and sort of polish it to the perfection so I can be happy with the results.
And I'm sure we're going to be happy with those results too. When we hear some of your music, people, I want you to go to this website, check it all out, StephenVagovics.com. Go there, check out his music. I'm sure his music is also available on YouTube. You're going to love the stuff that he does. Stephen Vagovics, special guest here today on People of Distinction with Al Cole. And let's get more in depth here with your music too. We've been describing, how you put it together. Guitar seems to be your basic instrument here. Lyrically, you write your lyrics. What do you generally talk about in your lyrics for your music, Stephen?
Well, it may sound cliche, but it's usually emotions about love and about relationships, but also sometimes about nostalgia or some tougher moments in life. For example, one of my songs called Eventually, it was written when I was kind of confused about the meaning of life, or what's the meaning of being in this world, and what's the point of living, basically.
What is the point of living, basically, Stephen?
Well, I'm not sure. That's one of the toughest questions we all have to answer. It's really tough to say an exact answer to this question. I think we all have our own answers.
Yeah, we do, and I'll give you one of my answers. One of the reasons to live, people, is to love. Just as Stephen was saying before, a lot of his lyrics, most of his lyrics, have to do with love. Now, that's a no-brainer because we know that since music began, lyrically, we've been talking about love. We've been talking about the upside of love. We've been talking about the downside of love. Now, everybody knows about the upside. Wow, it's so great to have this woman in my arms. It's so great to have this man in my life. We know about that. We also know about the downside, with the blues. And boy, I got the blues today, brother. And both can be serving to the human heart, the human soul. We can learn from some of our misfortune if we have the will to do that. And we can elevate ourselves if we have the will to do that, to the point where now we understand that, hey, I'm not the only one going through this. Other people are going through it. And that is probably the biggest reason why we become artists. We become creative people, to identify our lives with other people's lives and vice versa. And so that we can now reach out to others in that inspirational stream and say, hey, I've been there, I've done that. I can understand how you feel right now. I can understand about some of the great things that are going through that wonderful mind of yours, because we all have a wonderful mind ultimately. Human beings are made that way. And I can also understand some of the not so great things that are going on. It's all right. I'm going to provide a little bit of inspiration here with a song. Some people provide it with a painting. Others provide it with a poem. We're going to do it with a song, and we're going to make you feel better. Now, that's what the Beatles did, and that's what Stephen was talking about. That's why the Beatles still live, and they still live in Stephen's music as well. We can relate to other people through our art, can't we, Stephen?
Yes, I totally agree.
And now, with the music that you do you do any live performing, or is it strictly studio stuff that you're doing right now?
Well, for now it's strictly studio stuff, but I'm also planning to do some gigs. But first I have to find some really talented people to work with who are willing to perform my songs.
Is it easier to find people in your area than it would be in the U.S., or is it pretty much the same these days?
Well, I think that finding people in Slovakia is really quite difficult when compared to the United States, because most people here have some of a narrow musical preference, or how can I say that? They are not really into the older stuff or some of the more rock-oriented stuff. They are usually into the punk scene or hip-hop or modern pop stuff. So it's quite difficult to find people who are still inspired and motivated by the older music.
I get it. Well, one of the great equalizers these days, and I'm sure you agree, Stephen, is the internet. It isn't like it was, back in the Beatles' time where, well, you've got to try to relate to people around the world through your music publisher or through your record company or through gigging, and, that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of money to get all of this stuff all around the world. These days, we can get it around the world just through, the internet sources, iTunes and whole CD Baby, a whole bunch of ways that we can get our music out through our websites, everything. What are some of the ways that you're getting your music out there to people? Of course, your website, StephenVagovics.com, is one way, but I'm sure you have a YouTube site. You might be on Reverb, a whole bunch of other, Reverb Nation, a whole bunch of others. Tell us a little bit about the ways that we can access your music online.
Well, of course, as you mentioned, my entire album and songs are also on YouTube. They are also available for purchase on Amazon, CD Baby, Reverb Nation as well, when I'm correct, iTunes, of course, and many other digital outlets. It's also available on CD when someone is interested in buying this, and pretty much broad options to get the album. Unfortunately, I still don't have any record deal, so it's all independently released, but it still gets some response and feedback, and I'm just happy that some people like my music and enjoy listening to it, and that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, and that's cool stuff there. What would be some of your advice for other young people who are getting started with their music? Some things that you can recommend, either from the creative point of view, maybe how to put a song together, from the instrumental point of view, certain equipment that is vital these days, with maybe drum tracks and putting down instrumental tracks, and then the marketing thing, getting it online, getting it onto a lot of the different areas of the internet, so that it makes it visible, and they can sell some of this stuff. Give us some of your advice to our young starting out music people out there?
Well, from my experience, what I did, I bought a cheaper microphone, and since then I've tried to make many vocal covers and just send these MP3 files to as many friends as I could possibly, and I asked about their opinions and what can be done better, and this way I've sort of learned how to do improvements in my performances and in my singing and playing in general. And I really suppose that this one trick helped me the most to get to the point of recording my own music the way I imagine it to sound. I guess this would be my number one advice for starting musicians: to get a microphone, practice, and ask friends about their opinions on how they can improve their art or their playing in general.
Absolutely, absolutely. And boy, that would be my advice too. We're talking to a great guy here, talented musician, Stephen Vagovics. He's our special guest here today on People of Distinction with Al Cole. Go to his website, check out everything that he's doing there. It's StephenVagovics.com. Also, check him out on YouTube, on iTunes, CD Baby, Reverb Nation, all of the great places where we can buy new music these days. Stephen is represented. Stephen, we have just a few minutes left in the show. I want to take it out with some possibility thinking here for the future of music and musicians in our world. I'm going to put it this way. Even before the Beatles, there was Frank Sinatra. Even before Frank, there was, Beethoven, Mozart. There were always musicians around. There was always music around. And, there are a lot of blues musicians. There were country musicians. Musicians will never die, even if the music industry is always in transition. We know that for the longest time, music industry, the big stars, and they were promoting them, getting out their work, and that was during the British invasion, and before that. And then, all of a sudden, the 90s hit, and hip-hop becomes big, and rap becomes big, and now there's a different way of doing it. But then into the 2000s, internet becomes big, and some of the majors are not as important as they used to be. What do you see for the future with especially internet and maybe even beyond internet to market music, to get the music out there, to get that passion of musicians out there in ways into our future? What do you see for the future of music and the music industry?
It's quite hard to tell, but based on the previous years, since 2000, I guess that concerts and gigs are becoming more and more important for bands and singers to earn some decent income from their art. And I can kind of hope that the streaming services such as Spotify or even YouTube monetization, that they can improve so much that the artists can earn enough money to basically survive just by having their music on these platforms, because now it's really quite poor when it comes to earnings. It's really quite low. We are talking about a few cents a stream, which is really difficult for starting bands to even earn a few dollars from their art, which needed investments and a lot of money to begin with. So I really hope that these streaming platforms can improve so much into the future that they can provide enough earnings even for the starting bands to just cope with all the bills and necessities in their lives.
Got to give the future a chance here, people. and not be afraid to transition. We know that there are a lot of millennials out there. We use that term. The millennials, they're us, Whether we are 30 or 25 or 20 or whatever age, the millennials live in us because we're part of the human family. And that human family has been out there for thousands and thousands of years, sometimes debatably millions of years. And so nothing's beyond us. We have to pave a good path for our younger people, because our younger people will pave a good path then for their younger people coming up, their kids and the children's children. We owe it to our human family to give opportunities to newer generations, and particularly through the arts. The arts can make us feel like we're worth it. They can give us hope when other things let us down, and particularly music. I know the power of music myself. We need to invest in that future, no matter what it takes. And it doesn't always take money. Sometimes it takes a little bit of heart and soul, and that beautiful emotional expression that we can give to our artists, giving them that wink and saying, hey, keep going. Boy, you're making me feel good. You're doing a great job. And that can work wonders, people, when we value the arts, when we value music, the gift of music, and the gift of our artists and our musicians. And that's the way we put it on People of Distinction with Al Cole, especially when we have a great guest like Stephen Vagovics. And he's a great guy doing wonderful music. And I want you to support what he's doing. Go to his website, stephenvagovics.com. You're going to see a lot of the beautiful stuff that he's putting together. And you're going to hear a lot of that stuff and links to his YouTube site. Also Reverb Nation, CD Baby, iTunes, everything. Order some of his music here. Get back to him with your encouragement. On People of Distinction, we have some of the best guests, and that includes Stephen Vagovics. Thank you, Stephen, for being my special guest here with Al Cole. So until next time, people, wish you peace, awareness, romance, and mostly love.